Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Common Ground, and I'm Jason Downs. Welcome to a place where we can all agree on the important stuff, like celebrating our local nurses who have been working tirelessly ever since March of last year to keep this community safe and healthy during the pandemic. We will be honoring one such hero today as we welcome Nurse Monique to the show in a moment here. Today is February 1st, and it's a cold and rainy day. Patty and I were just saying that it just, it feels like we should be in bed, right?
Seriously though, like I'm just in like a little tired little wave right now, just like 10 more minutes,
I
mom.
know, right? Right?
Right?
It's been a rainy week, which I love,
Oh yeah,
Reminds
seriously.
me of being home back east. But yeah, I'm having trouble waking up today. Anyway, it's February 1st. I'm so glad that you have you've joined me here on Common Ground. We also have the pleasure of co-host and sponsor Matt Denny on the show. Hopefully we'll have Lou Esbin on later as well. He had a court call. It's always a treat to have you. Matt, how are you holding up?
Fabulous. I don't know if I'm so sure about this how cold it is thing. It's 66 degrees out.
No,
Um,
you're right.
I
No,
lived in Montana for 10 years. This is not cold.
no, it's not even
This is
cold
nothing.
compared to back east where I grew up. This is nothing. This is balmy.
We're,
It's balmy.
yeah, we're spoiled, and I like that.
Well, it's sounds like we got Lou there just under the wire as well. Lou, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Oh, good to have you. Good to have you. It's always a treat, which means we might even get some much needed tax or legal advice if we're lucky today. So stick around. Later on, we'll also try and visit our artist almanac if there's enough time. So it's going to be a great show, great day, a great week. Denny and Company LLP certified public accountants. They make your life less taxing, so reach out to Matt Denny for all your accounting needs at dennyllp.com or by calling 661 286 8860. And of course, the law offices of Lou Esbin. When experience counts, count on experience at espinlaw.com. That's ESBINLAW.com. 35 years serving the Santa Clarita Valley and beyond. Lou specializes in bankruptcy, business law, and commercial protection. Schedule a consultation with Lou today at espinlaw.com or by calling 661 254 5050. So, guys, February 1st, all right, little history. 1790, February 1st, was the first session of the U.S. Supreme Court. Yeah, in the in the Royal Exchange Building on New York City's Broad Street, the Supreme Court of the United States met for the first time when Chief Justice John Jay of New York presided. Anyway, I always love these
Been
types of things.
downhill ever since.
Thanks, Matt.
Such an optimist.
The eternal optimist. I'm the eternal optimist here. Uh, February 1st, 1884. This is cool. The first portion or facsimile of the Oxford English Dictionary was published, considered the most comprehensive and accurate dictionary of the English language even today. It was published for the first time February 1st, 1884. February 1st, 1887 is the last one. Harvey Wilcox officially registered Hollywood with the Los Angeles County Recorder's Office. He and his wife were the first to move there, and they bought 160 acres of land in the Cahuenga Valley, and so began a wild and crazy history. Anyhow, I hope that you and your family and no one you know has gotten COVID this past year. In fact, I hope no one you know has needed to go to the hospital for anything. But if you have, then you know how serious some cases can be, and you know how dedicated, invaluable, and indispensable our nurses are to our community's health and well-being. Without our nurses, where would we be, really? We want to say thank you. We want to say we see you. We are grateful for you, and we're fortunate today to have one of these local heroes on the show with us to tell us about her experiences this past year, her struggles, her concerns, her advice. Please welcome Nurse Monique. We're going to refrain from using her last name or her place of work for her privacy, but thank you so much for being with us today. Monique, how are you?
Hi, thank you
Hi.
so much for having me.
Oh, it's a
I'm
pleasure.
doing well.
Good, good, good. So you're off today, thankfully, and we got to sneak
Thank goodness. Yes, I have a day off.
we got to sneak you in. So what are you doing on this rainy week? Are you snuggled up and warm and
I'm drinking some hot tea on the couch with my
Perfect.
little dog and not doing much.
Perfect.
So it's a good day.
Well, so how long have you lived in the Santa Clarita Valley?
I've lived here since I was 5 years old. So pretty much my whole life, as long as I can remember.
Okay. And how long have you been a nurse?
I've been a nurse. It'll be 5 years in June.
5 years. And are you considered still sort of a rookie, a newbie, or are you? Is it the kind of thing where as soon as you've spent some time as a nurse, it's like you're in the trenches?
I think after about 6 months, you're
Okay.
you're scared every day going to work. In your first 6 months, you feel like you're just going to mess up anything that you touch. But I think after your first year, you're pretty aware of what's going on. And I tell everybody it's like learning a new language. So once you've spoken a new language for at least a year and you're fluent, you start to kind of understand things that you can kind of put it together better than you did before. So I feel pretty seasoned, especially the past year. There's been a lot of adapting that all nurses have had to do. We have
Sure.
nurses in the NICU that are helping out other floors with adults who they haven't even seen adults since nursing school. So I'm just grateful to have everybody come together, and battle the coronavirus.
Well, so yeah, I mean, obviously, I want to get into that. So you worked the COVID unit, right, for the past, well, since March, right?
Yes.
What were you doing before then? Like you just mentioned, everybody obviously was doing something else before.
Yeah, I'm actually a cardiac telemetry nurse. So I usually have a ratio of 4 patients during one shift. All of my patients are on heart monitors. We get post-cardiac cath patients. We're specialty trained in that. Basically anything related to a heart attack, my floor would treat. But it's also any other illness like patients who are on dialysis that miss appointments and respiratory illnesses. We kind of take everything, anybody that needs to be on a heart monitor. So
Well,
it's kind of a broad spectrum.
I mean, those things obviously didn't stop happening back in March when COVID began to, take over our lives. How did you guys make that transition? I mean, have you seen a drastic drop in those other patients, or?
Yes. So initially, back in March, we weren't seeing too many patients with COVID, and the ones that we did, they would come in pretty early. So we were able to treat them a little bit quicker. I mean, we only have like 6, 7, 8 patients at a time where I work. And we had a lot of patients with normal illnesses that used to come in all the time, like for renal, respiratory, anything that's not related, cardiac, any issues that was not related to COVID, they would be kind of backing away from the hospital. So our patient census level actually dropped, and we were way overstaffed in the very beginning. And then once the numbers of the COVID patients start spiking, once it starts spreading, we were just inundated with all the COVID patients, and we had dedicated floors for those patients depending on how critical they are. So those floors started really filling up in the past, I want to say like the past 4 months is when we really saw the first surge. I don't have dates exactly. But then the other patients who used to come in all the time for other illnesses and chronic diseases that we would see, they started, they have to come back because they've waited so long. So not only did we have the critical COVID patients, we also had patients that should have been seen a month ago who are now just struggling to even stay alive, and they're all coming into the hospital again. So now we're kind of seeing, I wouldn't say an equal number of hospitalized patients that are COVID and non-COVID, but it's starting to really balance out. So we've had dedicated floors that are all just any other illness and then COVID. we
Well,
keep them all
so
separated.
in relation to all of that, let me ask my burning question, the elephant in the room, I suppose, because I've heard, and I'm sure you've heard, some citizens say things like, "We're being lied to about the number of cases," or "We're being lied to about beds being full at hospitals," that sort of thing. And so, I mean,
Hmm.
you sort of touched on that. So about 4 months ago, you're saying you really saw the surge, finally here in Santa Clarita, at least. But what have you observed about the hospitals in LA County? Let's say. I mean, do you feel?
I mean, I have friends that work at multiple other hospitals, and we talk, from nursing school, and they're telling me the same thing that I'm seeing at my hospital, where at first it's okay, it's kind of slowly trickling in, and then all of a sudden they're just hit. So, we do have a lot of COVID patients. All of our beds are full. We are short staffed. Every hospital that any friend that I have that works at other hospitals I've spoken to, they're completely full. And I like to be an optimist. I don't want to live in fear. I don't want to be that person, but and I try not to. It's all about being healthy at the end of the day. But you have to just be careful, and the cases that are bad are really bad. And it's a lot of our elderly population who are getting sick. It's a lot of patients with comorbidities, diabetes, any illness that contributes to a worse respiratory infection. It'll just exacerbate it even more than we thought, than we've seen with the flu or anything that we've seen before. It's really not like anything we've ever seen.
Okay, well, so tell us more about that. What do you mean by nothing like you've ever seen before? Because that's another thing we hear. Oh well, it's just another strain similar to the flu, or it's just it's like things we have seen before and will eventually be immune to it. So why all the hullabaloo? What's
Mhm.
your
And
perspective
I
on that?
agree that could be true. I hope that that's true, that it's nothing like we've seen before. There's been SARS in previous years. I think the reason why this has become such a huge deal is because when you have a seasonal flu, it's a strain that adapts over years, and everybody's had a flu at some point. Most people have caught it. And so your body has some sort of immunity to it. And I'm not a scientist. I'm just speaking my theory here. I think because this is so brand new and everyone is catching it at the same time, I think that's where the real danger is.
So
Because
is it less about the number of beds and more about nurses to that point? About more about the number of nurses and doctors to tend the beds because
yes,
okay. And
yes.
and Matt and Lou, don't let me hog all the questions. If you want to jump in, jump in. But so when we hear, you know, people say things like these, or we hear the reports about, oh, there's not enough beds, so to speak, to handle this, or we need to wear masks so that we can help the hospitals, keep some open beds, et cetera, et cetera. Um, it's more about having enough nurses and doctors as opposed to actual physical beds. Is that
I think it's both actually,
okay?
because we really have ran out of beds completely
Hmm.
in many hospitals in Southern California where, if you go to the emergency department, you'll be treated in the hallway.
Okay.
And because of that fact, doctors are taking on more patients, and respiratory therapists. Those are some of my best friends, and they're doing all the work with the ventilators, the high flow oxygen, BiPAP machines. Everybody's thinking nurses, and we appreciate it. But our respiratory therapists they are working side by side with us. The doctors, the infectious disease, respiratory doctors, those are the people who are really taking on so many extra patients. And, they're at the hospital 24/7. I don't even think they see their families at this point.
Well, I know we've seen images of that, right? And we've seen video of doctors. I've seen some in tents in their front yard. They haven't been able to have contact with their families. So is that still going on? I mean, have you seen that firsthand? This,
In the very beginning, people were talking about staying in a hotel just to stay away because we didn't know what it was going to be like.
sure.
Now that I think our doctors have been really amazing with with the treatment, and they've been so adaptable with this entire thing. When they see something doesn't work, they try something else. And they've seen a lot of promising results with patients that we thought maybe wouldn't make it. So I think they are going home. I haven't really spoken to any doctors that are staying away from home. Some nurses, if they live with, or if their elderly family members live with them, they've come up with other arrangements. But
So when you say they've been working 24 hours, what do you mean? I mean, that sounds...
they do go home, but, when they're at home, they're charting and putting in orders, and they're called all hours of the night. Physically, they do go home,
Gotcha.
unless they're on call, and then they stay in an on-call room, which some of, the ICU intensivists do, and there's doctors that are at the hospital overnight. But, most of them are called in the middle of the night for any reason.
So this sense that we've been given that the health system is somewhat overwhelmed, or at least the healthcare workers are overwhelmed, you would say, yeah, at least in the past 4 months, you've observed something like that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, interesting. All right, well, let's take a quick break. I know that Nurse Monique has some very strong thoughts about our overall health, right? And what we can do just in general, right? I want to give you a chance to really give us your advice on that. So when we come back, we'll be talking more with Nurse Monique about her advice on our overall health, as well as the vaccine. So stay with us right here on KHTS. This is Common Ground, 98.1 FM and AM 1220.
Join us this fall for online fun with the Canyon Theater Guild online youth workshops. Super fun classes with acting, singing, dancing, audition tips, script writing, scene study, improv, and putting on real shows created for online performance. Get creative, meet new friends, and most of all, have a blast from the comfort of your own home. Call 661-799-2702 or ctgworkshops@gmail.com or canyontheater.org.
Time for a car wash, but fearful of the scratches that go along with it? Canyon Car Wash and Valencia Car Wash proudly use 100% lamb's cloth to prevent scratches and provide the best wash possible. Both locations use environmentally friendly solutions to wash and wax your vehicle, and they both accept all other car wash coupons. Give your vehicle the wash it deserves. Visit Canyon Car Wash on Soledad across from Edwards Cinema, or Valencia Car Wash on Creekside Road behind Target.
Finding the right lawyer can be a challenge, but in Santa Clarita, there's no need to search when there's Hacker Law Group, Santa Clarita's premier litigation firm. Jeffrey Hacker has represented celebrities, financial institutions, accident victims, real estate developers, realtors, contractors, businesses, nonprofit organizations, and other individuals and companies with their legal challenges. Mr. Hacker is one of Santa Clarita's leaders, consistently listed as one of our most influential. When everything is on the line and you need legal counseling, visit hackerlawgroup.com.
Your hometown station, KHTS.
Welcome back to Common Ground. I'm Jason Downs. We've been speaking with Nurse Monique, who has been a nurse for 5 years in the community and has served the past year on the COVID unit and has had a an up-close front row seat to what's been going on the front lines. And we thank you so much for what you do, Monique, and we appreciate you and all of your colleagues, talking about these people who have worked and worked and worked, and some doctors who have been on basically 24/7 during this. We cannot thank you enough. So glad you're with us. So we definitely want to hear about some of your overall advice, what you consider to be the best defense against COVID-19. But let's talk about vaccines for a moment first. So, I mean, about 25 million Americans have been vaccinated at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Any issues so far with the vaccine that you've seen?
So I've seen, like my coworkers, they've had, the minor aches and pains after the second dose. which is to be expected with pretty much any vaccine, arm soreness, things like that. I haven't seen anything. I've seen maybe one of my friends who has a history of really bad allergies. She had one reaction to it, but they say if you do have anaphylaxis in your history with allergies, that you're not supposed to get this vaccine. So, she didn't know how bad it was at the time. But I haven't seen anything else happen with any patients getting sick after with COVID. I think it hasn't been long enough.
Yeah, I mean, I looked up, before the show today to see if there had been any issues, and it seems to be as safe as the studies showed them to be thus far. We've seen a 35% decline in COVID cases the past couple weeks or so, and some doctors and scientists are saying about a third of the population has most likely already had it, and and didn't know it.
That's great.
We're
I
hearing
hope
about these sorts of things. What's your position on herd immunity? We talked about that a second ago. Do you think we'll reach herd immunity before enough of us have been vaccinated, or is
I'm not sure. A lot of people have said that anytime that some type of a pandemic or epidemic or anything that's been rolled out usually takes 18 months to level out, either due to people, I could be completely wrong. I'm not an infectious disease doctor. We know a few that have better numbers on this. This is just, my own research I've seen. But I think the vaccine, it's supposed to, as far as we know right now, it could last in your system 6 months. It may be a yearly vaccine like the flu. Just depending on how long it lasts, I think that'll really contribute to if we're going to be seeing more immunity with the population. So I'm hoping it lasts a while. And, patients who have had their antibodies test, who've had COVID, sometimes their antibodies turn, or it's not detected anymore after 3 to 6 months.
Right.
So I'm not sure if that means they can get sick again with the same strain, or, what the severity will be the next time if they do catch it. Everything's just kind of a learning game right now.
Sure, which it has been for the past year. So one thing I wanted to read in relation to the vaccine is something I saw from some Johns Hopkins epidemiologists and some Harvard Medical School doctors. It was in the New York Times. It says infections aren't necessarily what matters. The news about vaccines continues to be excellent, and the public discussion of it continues to be more negative than the facts warrant. They said that all 5 vaccines with public results have eliminated COVID-19 deaths. And that's the distinction that her name is Caitlin Rivers at Johns Hopkins and Julia Marcus at Harvard Medical School want to emphasize. They have reduced drastically hospitalizations, but what they want to, I guess, differentiate and or emphasize is that while there may be varying degrees of effectiveness between the 5 different vaccines on the market right now, they all prevent COVID-19 deaths, and they prevent, the severity, or they affect the severity of the case. Oftentimes it means that you won't feel anything at all. Other times it just means that it won't be as severe. But they really are trying to drive home the fact that it has essentially eliminated COVID-19 deaths. That's what these vaccines are able to do at this point. Have you found that to be true? I don't know how many people you've vaccinated thus far, but what's your perspective on that?
I have not seen anybody come in to the hospital after being vaccinated. I think that the vaccines rolled out for us in December, and it was a 2-part, but I haven't seen anybody getting sick with COVID. It's still a very short period of time.
Sure.
But no, I mean, from the studies, it shows that there haven't been any deaths after the vaccine, and I haven't seen anybody being contracted with COVID. So, it's again, just something we have to wait and see and look at the data, maybe a year from now.
So what would you like to tell us before we say goodbye and let you enjoy your day off, much deserved?
Um,
what's your overall advice?
my overall advice, especially because we're in, the colder months, when respiratory illnesses are at their peak, I think the thing I've seen the most in the hospital, it's heartbreaking. There's patients that have so many medical problems, and they have so many family members that are contracting COVID, and I think the main focus needs to be put back on maintaining our health and trying to prevent these comorbidities from happening in the first place.
Hmm.
I think that's our main defense, because we can have a vaccine that is 100% foolproof. We can have the best drugs on the market, but if your body can't fight an infection because of another reason like diabetes or hypertension or morbid obesity, these are things that we need to try to prevent. And I hope that this virus is kind of a wake up call for a lot of the population. And there's so many reasons. There's hereditary reasons why people have illnesses. There's anything can be passed down. I'm Hispanic, so diabetes runs in my family, hypertension. I've had many overweight family members. So I try really hard to eat healthy, lots of vegetables, try to maintain low carbs, exercise, even if it's just a short walk uphill, just doing anything to get moving. Constantly washing your hands. I think the biggest way to prevent any sickness is before you go to the grocery store, I see people, putting gloves on and putting on their mask, and, they're so scared to be near anybody. But I think the best thing you can do is just wash your hands, be aware of your surroundings. You don't have to live in fear, but just try to be healthy. And I think that's the best way to really live your life and not have to be stuck inside the house all day, every day, and just really focus on diet and exercise, because there's no easy way to be healthy unless it's a habit. And you can prevent all of these illnesses from happening. And then you have a better chance of fighting anything that you can contract, even cancers and respiratory illnesses. You can prevent renal failure, anything. So that's kind of my biggest takeaway. This has been a wake-up call for me, seeing all of these patients just struggling, and, what could they have done, or what can their families learn from this?
Well, thank you for that advice. Thank you for the wonderful job that you've been doing, and can't thank you enough for being on the show. Nurse Monique, we wish you the very best, and hopefully we'll have you back on the show sometime in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. You take care. Enjoy your day off.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
So, Matt, Lou, how are things? What's shaking? Talk to me. What did you think of Nurse Monique?
I think she's fantastic.
She is, isn't she?
And this harks back to a theme of the show in weeks past, which was that we need to make America grateful again. And
yes,
she would be one of those people I'd put up as someone who exemplifies, a helper. And
absolutely.
we all need to pause between complaints about all the terrible things going on in our country, and remember that we have wonderful people helping us all the time. We're surrounded by helpful Americans, and I'm just grateful that we got to talk to her, for crying out loud. That's great.
No, you're absolutely right, and she's obviously a young woman. She's 5 years into her career, and already a seasoned nurse, as she pointed out. When you're in the trenches like that, you learn fast, you mature fast, and you're right. I feel so fortunate to have people like that on the front lines. So couldn't agree more. Grateful Grateful, grateful. So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have Matt Denny and Lou Esbin with us, and we'll talk about some important things that have been happening in our lives, and we'll talk about some important things that may be coming up in our lives. So stick with us right here on Common Ground. This is KHTS 98.1 FM and AM 1220.
This is Jill from the Santa Clarita Grocery, the all-volunteer grocery program serving children, families, and individuals experiencing food insecurities. Since January 2020, Santa Clarita Grocery has distributed 83 tons of fresh groceries to our 4,655 families in the SCV community. Santa Clarita Grocery is a drive-up, drive-through service with physical distancing in place to continue serving our community. If you are in need or looking for a charity to do the most good for our community, please consider partnering with us by donating to Santa Clarita Grocery, one of the most efficient charities in the Santa Clarita Valley. A full 99 cents out of every dollar goes directly back to the community. Santa Clarita Grocery operates on a 1% overhead and is sustained through private donations. Santa Clarita Grocery is at 21176 Center Point Parkway in the Oasis Furniture parking lot. Please visit our website at santaclaritagrocery.org or our Facebook at Santa Clarita Grocery to make a difference in our awesome town community. 425-7575. Be our guest and experience the difference.
And now a cooking tip from Keith Mowry from Bob's Country Meats. Everyone loves chicken. It's easy to cook in a variety of ways, especially on the barbecue.
Marinate it overnight in your favorite marinade. Brown it up nice on the barbecue. And then put it on the other side in direct heat. Close your lid. Take another 25-30 minutes. And they're good.
Chicken, tri-tip, pork chops, turkeys, steaks, even exotic game like buffalo and ostrich. For the tastiest chicken in town, visit Bob's Country Meats on Soledad in Canyon Country.
I listen to it all day, every day.
Hometown, your hometown station.
And we're back. This is Common Ground. I'm Jason Downs. So glad you are joining us today. I've got Matt Denny and Lou Esbin on the line, co-hosts and sponsors of Common Ground. We spoke to Nurse Monique first portion of the show, a wonderful nurse in our community. So let's get some business out of the way. I'm curious myself about taxes for the year 2020. I mean, I don't know how long it's been since we've had Matt, but I'm going to jump on you here. Tell us, are there any new laws, any new provisions? Do we all, get to just not file this year because it was such a crazy, such unusual circumstances? Any good news?
Well, I would make a joke, but then someone would record it and take it out of context, and I'd lose my license or whatnot. Anyhow, just kidding. There aren't a lot of big changes, but this year they did make it so that 1099s have to be submitted, including the government, the PANCs, by January 31st, or today, actually, since the 31st fell on a Sunday. And so if you need to get 1099s out, you need to get that done today. In addition, the state of California is going to expect the new 1099 NECs, which is a relatively new thing. That's for non-employee compensation. Used to be you'd send out a 1099 MISC and miscellaneous and put the stuff in the right box, but now there's a whole new form for that. The other thing that's new is that they aren't allowing 2020 e-filing of individual returns until February 12th. So I had a few people that like to come in very early, and we just can't file them electronically until the 12th of February. So I suspect that has a lot to do with COVID and the lack of programming staff being available at the IRS. They've had all sorts of problems with staffing over the last year, as we can imagine.
Gotcha. Well, so does that mean I could still make an appointment with you and come in before February 12th, and you can just not wait to send it out until after that, or you're not?
Yeah, that's what we're doing right
Okay.
now. Is,
Okay.
we're preparing individual tax returns, and we're just hanging on to them. If you have a refund coming, we could send it right now, but that would actually slow down your refund because it would still have to be handled manually. So we're just trying to make sure that people have the expectation that's a little more realistic than getting their refund by the end of January.
So the SBA loans, I'm curious about because, as you know, we talked about this on the show, and I sort of you walked me through the process, and then I went through the process and got a little bit of an SBA loan. I keep getting invoices, even though supposedly you don't. I guess you have a year deferment, right? Or whatever it was. I keep getting invoices, and the amount keeps ticking up, even though I'm not supposed to necessarily. I've started making payments because I noticed, like, wow, okay, they're taking interest this whole time. Did I know that, or was that something that they neglected to emphasize?
Well, the first question I'd have is this your PPP loan from last year, or is this your SBA EIDL loan, EIDL?
It's the second one, yes.
It's the second one?
The latter, yeah.
I'm curious that you're already getting invoices.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty strange too.
We just now received, we got an EIDL loan, and we have not received an invoice yet because of that 1 year limit, although just today we got a notice about who was going to service the loan, and that was from the SBA. And I guess they're servicing it out of El Paso, Texas. And some of us know a fellow who works for the SBA in El Paso, so it'll be kind of interesting. I'm sure he's not in that department, but
no, he's processing each and one of them.
Oh my! Well, it's keeping busy and out of.
It's keeping him busy.
I guess so. What are your Lou? I know we've talked a lot about finances and best practices and whatnot. I know you deal with that on a daily basis, as a bankruptcy attorney. What do you think of the stimulus concept? And I know obviously most of us got some sort of stimulus last year. Some of us are getting a little bit more already this year. They're talking about more. What's your take on that from a financial perspective? And
well, I think like anything that comes out of Congress, the devil is in the details. I mean, how much pork is there going to be in this bill? $1.9 trillion. There's a lot of money that can go other than for stimulus purposes. So I'm of course cautious. I'd like to see the details of where really those monies are going. I mean, how much of it is actually going to reach down into the economy to make a difference, versus, who's going to be getting paid because they did a political favor at some point or another. That's the cynical side of me.
Well, I don't think you need to be cynical, Lou. Let's just look at what happened with the recovery stimulus in 2009 when the new administration came in. None of that went any place that it shouldn't have or was wasted or, oh, wait a minute. I think we're in for it again.
Yeah, right.
Hate to say. I think we're going to be funding some new cylinders and some other things like that we're going to end up having fail because the government trying to decide who's going to win and lose is almost always a bad idea.
Well, I mean, you guys have your fingers on the pulse in perhaps similar ways and perhaps some different ways. I mean, as a bankruptcy attorney, as a public accountant, you see what people are going through. So how how would you approach this more effectively? I mean, obviously, there's not much we can do about where all the money goes. If it, some of it obviously we know is bound to end up going in someone's pocket or in ineffectual. Anyhow, we've come to know that that's the government. But what would you guys do in the positions that you're in, from the positions that you're in? How would we handle this? I mean, how do we help people? Supposing that everything that goes to the right places, let's leave that aside. What would be effective from your perspectives? Lou, what do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, how do you, you have certain industries that have been completely and utterly decimated as a result. You have people who have been building their businesses for decades and overnight have lost those businesses and whose clients are not going to be coming back anytime soon. What do you do with them? The hair salons, the nail salons, the restaurants, pick and choose your industry. The guy who used to shine shoes at Burbank Airport. I don't know. How do you get all of that back? I don't know. I don't think throwing stimulus money at it is going to particularly make a difference.
But that's a good point, though, because as human beings, it's kind of in our nature to believe, our reality in this moment is never going to change. You know what I mean? It's always going to be this way, kind of thing. A little bit, that's kind of a human tendency. Whereas I kind of think all these things are going to come back eventually, right? I mean, it's not like we're not going to need our hair done. A year from now.
But you're going to have people who are saying, I don't want to walk into a hair salon where people are sitting around waiting, or people are wearing their masks below their nose like they wear their underwear. You're talking about people coming back, and they themselves are reluctant. We walk up to a restaurant, we peer into the front door, and if someone's got their mask below their nose, we walk away.
Sure.
We walk away.
If you spot Gavin Newsom.
Say again?
Or if you spot Gavin Newsom through the window. I'll probably walk away
Easy now.
Too much money for dinner there for me, anyhow.
So you guys, I mean, I'm asking you as leaders, not just owners of businesses and fields. What would you do, Matt? What would your approach be? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I very much was impressed with what eventually happened with the EIDL program with the SBA, and I wouldn't mind seeing them do that again. They're doing
I agree.
They're doing round two of PPP. Which I think is also very helpful, and that's gonna help a lot of folks. They're also allowing some people who didn't do all of what they could do in PPP round one to expand their round one PPP loan. It's not very well known, but so for example, partnerships that didn't account for the owner's draws can now go back and correct that. And hopefully get their loan expanded.
Okay, see that's a point I want to ask you more about, the PPP. From your perspectives, do you feel like everyone who could have taken advantage of that did? And if they didn't, say again?
No.
Okay.
Very quickly, no. Not everybody who could have did, and those who did probably could have gotten more. And there were people that didn't know about the EIDL loan, So I'm in agreement with Matt. I think that is a much more sustainable approach to this than just throwing money at people.
And it's not too late, you're saying, that they're starting another round, or you're hoping they're starting?
Yes.
They are.
Not for EIDL, but PPP.
The PPP has started a few weeks ago,
Okay.
and we've done a number of applications for clients or helped them with theirs. And our own I just got an email this morning that our own was approved by the SBA. So,
I'm wondering if there's. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could potentially help folks in the community, small business owners, et cetera, who may not have an amazing accountant like you and don't know that they have to get all this from their bank, or you know what I mean? Is there a way that we could turn this into a service project for the Rotary, or just ourselves, or on the radio station here? Is there a campaign in which that you could realistically see that we could help people make these connections?
Sure.
I'm just putting it out there as an idea.
Yeah, I'm not certain what the funding levels are that are remaining in the second round of PPP, but we could certainly get the word out there and make sure people understand that they can apply. Usually, if they've got a pretty active business, their bankers should have already called them.
Okay.
Just as a service. Or if they did it last year, they would hear from the same bank that did it, and they would say, well, would you like to do it again? They also need to get their forgiveness information put in so they can have the first round forgiven if they can. We don't yet know whether there's going to be a new round of EIDL loans because the legislation hasn't passed. I'm hoping that there will be, and I'm hoping that they'll disqualify some of the folks that got them last time who certainly didn't need them. I think any publicly traded company probably.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at too. I feel like, the bigger businesses that jumped on that initially, and either had the means, had the knowledge, had the accountants, whatever the case was, or their banks specifically, advocated on their behalf. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Is there a way that we can, help the smaller business person make sure that they get the full advantage of these benefits, as opposed to it all going to publicly traded?
Yeah, I suppose that the main thing to do would be to just let people know that it's available and that they can contact us if they'd like some more information.
Yeah.
We can direct them to a bank that can help them. We have a client who's a loan broker, and they work with a number of banks. So, for example, someone who only banks with Wells Fargo and didn't get a PPP loan from them for whatever reason, there are alternative banks that you can go to. And, the whole process is online. It's fairly easy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need direction, then fine. And bear in mind that this also counts for sole proprietors or for people who don't take a W-2 in their business.
Right, which was my case precisely, exactly, and you informed me that I
But
could.
I think one of the things legislatively, and that's great, Matt. I think, and I agree that to the extent that someone's listening to the show, they're hearing this. I think the radio station should probably push that out in some of their email blasts. That would be helpful. But legislatively, I'd like to see part of this package that federally insured home mortgages as well as non-federally insured home mortgages are open to a more aggressive loan modification program, so that all of those months of forbearance that people have been on, that those months and months and months of forbearance, they get folded into loan modifications, so that people get back on track and are not staying up nights wondering if they're going to be able to make their mortgage payments. And quite frankly, I think that the interest rate should be appointed to above Fed funds so that this is all affordable.
Well, and the same
who am
thing
I to
perhaps for people who haven't been able to make their rent. We had the CDC declare that no one could be evicted for not paying their rent. What authority the CDC has to do that, I have no idea. But they did it. So we have a bunch of landlords who are sitting around, a lot of whom are mom and pops or retired people who can't afford to not have their rent paid.
Exactly.
Understandably, there are people who haven't been working, so they can't pay their rent. And I wouldn't mind seeing a program where the feds would establish loan accounts for those who owe back rent, because obviously they're going to be starting to be evicted here soon.
But also
sooner or later.
the landlords should be given some relief as far as their mortgages are concerned, and
Right.
that there should be there should be renegotiation of their mortgages. See, that's the thing. If everybody together takes a step back, including the banks, which they didn't do in 07 and 08, if everybody just takes a step back and absorbs some of this, we will be fine. But as soon as one steps out of line and is greedy, the whole house of cards is going to collapse.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to leave it there. One thing I do want to leave you guys with is just a bit of the Artist's Almanac. I love this. One of the purposes of the show is to create a common ground, a common language. And I think, the written word is such a perfect way to do that. Langston Hughes was born today. He's known for his experimental, he was an American poet, a social activist, a novelist, a playwright, a columnist. He was born in Missouri, one of the earliest innovators of the then new literary art form called jazz poetry. Hughes is best known as a leader of the Harlem Renaissance. He wrote a poem called Harlem. I just want to leave you with this. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? That's Langston Hughes. As always, I'd like to thank my sponsors, Matt, Denny, and Lou Esbin, and co-host today. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'd like to thank the amazing staff here at KHTS, the owners, Jerry and Carl, our fantastic engineer, Patty St. Patrick O'Schwanky. A pleasure to have you here on Common Ground, where we can always agree on the important stuff. I'm Jason Downs, and you're listening to KHTS. Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and stay optimistic.